board chair. I'm going to call the Cook County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, March 24th, 2020 to order. And before we start with our meeting, I would like to call on our interim administrator to read a statement about how we're going to proceed with this type of meeting format.
So I'm going to read a statement about meetings attended by telephone due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime.
I'm going to read a statement about.
Can somebody please turn on? Can somebody please mute their? Jenny, please mute your phone. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll start again. It has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 12, Minnesota Statute 13D.021, Subdivision 11. We have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, whether their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Again, Minnesota Statute 13D.021, Subdivision 12. We have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the county's website. Minnesota Statute 13D.021, Subdivisions 1, 3, and 3. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it is unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, and several members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. All votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded according to Minnesota Statute 13D.021, Subdivision 15. That's all.
Okay, before we get to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to take the opportunity to send a message to our listeners or those that are live streaming this and in general to everyone. We're going through some very difficult times, as everyone knows, and it's really critical that we try to follow all of the protocols and guidelines and rules and regulations of the COVID-19 that followed from the state. And we will be enacting and have taken some measures in the county as well. So this is a time where we have to really look at, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We're a tourist economy that has some challenges, but also it has some opportunities that we have as far as housing and so forth if we get into quarantine. I would like to just really thank and express my gratitude to our interim administrator. I know I can attest. Been working all weekend, as well as our, Grace Granager and Mike Keyport. We don't have the economy of scale as some other counties, but we really have good people that are willing to work, and they're working very hard. I'd like to also thank, our community, especially our businesses that are staying open, servicing us, those that serve in public safety and public health roles, child care workers, and so forth. They're trying to, provide us our vital needs as we go through this process. Special thanks to everyone that really tries to work together, even though we have to be distancing ourselves. It's a time where the most important things that we can keep in mind are to be kind, considerate, and helpful. And I think from my point of view, I've talked to a lot of people and been in contact with a lot of people, and we really have a wonderful community, and we really are fortunate that people are willing to work together rather than find criticism and self-promote. So with that, I think it would be appropriate for everyone to mute, but please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll just go through some things that were mentioned by our interim administrator. I'm going to try to go through everything by a roll call when it comes to preliminary discussions. And if we have to discuss things at length, we'll try to do that twice if necessary. But please, commissioners or any of those that are participating in this meeting, do not interrupt or speak until everyone that I've called on, all the commissioners, have had the opportunity to speak. After that, if you say your name, and I'll recognize you, and then we'll, go through the process of that discussion, and that same thing will apply to motion. But I think I'll try to get to the point where I think if everyone's discussed things in the preliminary discussion period, then I will indicate maybe that we're ready for a call for a motion. Then state your name. When you speak, please try to sign off with the term over, so then we know that you've completed your comments or thoughts and so forth. Are there any questions about that before we get into the adjustments to the agenda? Okay, very good. Well, the next item then is to make adjustments to the agenda. We had a meeting yesterday of our leadership team that goes through the agenda and discusses items and so forth. So we met, made some recommendations, and things have changed then. So I'm going to call on Interim Administrator Rogers at this time to sort of give us the latest update on the changes to the agenda. Would you do that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. So we went through the agenda. These are certainly unprecedented times, and it's not business as usual. So tried to look at things that could be postponed or things that could be moved to the consent agenda because they could have been there to begin with. And what you will see today, what we will end up with are 2 or 3 items that are really related to the current public health event that we are experiencing. So first off, item 3, consent agenda items, we're going to add some more things to that, but those items will all stay that are currently there. Item number 4, DDA Consulting, Gary Wires. Gary should be on this call with us, if he's not now, soon. Item number 5, City of Grand Marais EV Suitability Assessment. You might recall about a month ago, Shane Steele came in to talk to us about a project the city has underway, and we asked to revisit that. We're going to remove that from the agenda today, and that's already been communicated to Mr. Steele. Item number 6, the Highway Department fund exchange with St. Louis County. That will get moved to the consent agenda. It's to approve a fund exchange. Item number 7, from the Assessor's Office, Little Iron Lake lease with the DNR. This is a renewal of a lease that had expired with very little change, so that will get moved to the consent agenda. Item number 8, A and B under the attorney. The bylaws discussion will be postponed to another meeting, so that will be removed from the agenda today. And item B will also be canceled. I think the county attorney actually dealt with that via email yesterday to the commissioners. Item number 9 from the auditor, fourth quarter general fund budget review. That's not actually ready right now, so that will be removed, and we'll revisit that in April. So that one will be taken off of the agenda. Under Human Resources, we have one item that'll get moved to the consent agenda. That's item C. That's accepting the resignation of a part-time custodian. And so that will be moved to the consent agenda. The other items that are there relate to public health staffing. So we will have our human resources person online to help talk us through those. Obviously, we're at a time when we need to keep those moving forward. And then the rest of the agenda will stay intact. Any questions about that?
Okay, thank you. I know that you sent out an email this morning, Interim Administrator Rogers, in regard to the travel advisory. And I guess I'm asking the commissioners, would you like to add that as an agenda item? That would be more than likely 7, or should we just deal with that under commissioner concerns? If I could just do a roll call on that for your thoughts on that. Start with Commissioner Sorley.
I would say move it to the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Over.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
As long as we address it, I'm happy. I'm fine with it being at the end of the meeting. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Dukert?
I agree with Commissioner Mills. Make sure that we do not miss it on the agenda. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw?
Yeah, let's talk about it at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so that will not be number 7, but we will bring it up under Commissioner's concerns. And, excuse me here, I got to shuffle papers and try to keep notes as we go, but please remind me when we get to that point. I'll move it there right now. So with that, are we ready for a motion to approve the agenda? And if someone has any concern or question right now, would you just please indicate your name and state your concern if we don't go forward with that as a motion?
This is Commissioner Mills. I make a motion to approve the amended agenda. Over.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the... Go ahead.
You go
We have
ahead.
a motion. Commissioner Sorley, are you saying you support that?
Support. Over.
Okay. So with that, any discussion, further discussion on that? If not, then we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Mills?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Yes, over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Yes, over.
Commissioner Sorley?
Yes. Over.
Okay, and Board Chair Bershine is yes, so the motion has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Do we have, then we'll go into consent agenda items. But before that, excuse me, we are changing the public comment, but I assume no one's there for public comment. I haven't been briefed on that. Is anyone there?
No, Mr. Chair. No one's here.
Okay. Did we have any emails or any submissions?
Not that I know of.
We had that letter from
Okay.
Laboda.
Oh, from Laboda? Did you want to read it?
Did everybody get the letter from Laboda?
Do we have any emails or any submissions? I think that went just to the public safety.
Oh, from Laboda. Did you want to read it?
Did everybody get the letter from
So I'm going to ask again that people who are listening to the broadcast to please mute their phones because we can hear it in here.
Did everybody get the letter from
So I'm going to ask again that people who are
So excuse me, but I'm going to ask, does everyone have their phone muted? Please do that now. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, my response to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that went to the Public Safety and Transportation Committee from Laboda.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Myron, this is Bobby.
Yes.
Charlie called this morning and said that he was going to be here for public comment, but with the COVID-19 thing, he figured he didn't want to be here for, well, be out in public, I guess.
So Myron, I can read this. I can read this letter and enter it into public comment. I'll do that.
Okay, very good. That would be fine.
Okay, so dear Cook County Commissioners, we are writing to you today to request for your consideration a recommendation that the April 29th meeting of the Cook County Planning Commission be rescheduled, if at all possible, to April 15th and be held electronically if necessary. We submitted two CUP IUP requests to the Land Services Department on February 3rd, 2020 for the addition of hot mix asphalt, expansion of our open area allowance, and aggregate washing. These requests have been submitted in anticipation of upcoming MnDOT Highway 61 reconstruction in the Grand Portage area. Our pit is on the Arrowhead Trail in Hovland and would be a logical location to service this project in a cost-effective manner and alleviate heavy truck congestion in the Grand Marais area in the coming 2 years. The anticipated bid date of that work is April 24th. Due to concerns raised about the washing operation and time needed to address those concerns adequately, we have chosen to delay the request for aggregate washing and move forward with requests for hot mix asphalt and expanded area allowance. We have been on the Planning Commission agenda for the April 8th meeting that has been delayed to April 29th. We need to have some comfort level that those requests would be approved before the bid date of April 24th. A Planning Commission recommendation would give us that comfort level, even though we know that approval ultimately rests on you, the Commissioners. Thank you for your consideration in these difficult and unprecedented times. Signed, Charlie Laboda of Laboda Grading.
Okay. So that's any other public comments?
Not that I'm aware of.
I could just, I have commented to Tim Nelson, our Land Services Director, about a recommendation on how to proceed with that. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion, even though it's maybe not that important to deal with it right now, but I think it's being worked on. Okay, let's move on then to the consent agenda. We'll do a roll call if anyone has any questions or discussion any of these items or would like to pull it. Then I'll go through the roll call to determine that. So we'll start with Commissioner Dukert.
No questions, nothing to pull over.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw.
No questions.
Commissioner Mills.
No questions, over.
Commissioner Thorley. Commissioner Thorley. Oh, lost her again. I don't have any issues with it, so at this point in time, I would call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Heidi, motion to approve, over.
Thank you. And do we have a second support?
Dave, support. Commissioner Mills, support, over.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor, I will go through the roll call. Start with Commissioner Thorley. Oh, is she still there?
I'm here.
We will get. Okay. So do you support the consent agenda?
Support, yes. Over.
Okay, Mills,
Aye, Commissioner Mills. Over.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert.
Aye. Over.
Okay, and I vote aye. Over. So it has passed, and we'll move on to our first agenda item for Gary Wires. Is he on the phone with us?
Yes.
Oh, welcome. Thanks so much for your response to our inquiry about how to proceed. And we did present those options to the board previously. So thank you, and thanks for your willingness to connect with us this morning. Also want to, express our gratitude for your willingness to be somewhat flexible as we go forward during these very difficult times. And we sincerely want to thank you for your willingness to work with us on a very important process, and we need to try to preserve its integrity as much as we can. So thank you for that. Let's just start it off with, I would like to ask you, Mr. Weir, is it Weirs or Wire?
It's Wires. Over.
Thank you. I go back and forth on it. Thank you. Could you just give us some comments about your thoughts as a professional? I know we haven't gone through this pandemic. I doubt if you have. Could I just ask you for your professional advice to us at this point in time? I know you gave some options, but I think we would really need that at this time so we can have a discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be with you here today. I won't reiterate all of the options that I have previously shared with you, but I'll give you some commentary regarding what you're asking for as far as my professional opinion. The first thing that I would say is, as you just pointed out, these are unprecedented times. We have never faced this before, and all of us are learning somewhat as we go. With that said, what has firmed up a little bit for me in the last week is that, first of all, we're all hearing that we haven't seen the worst of this situation we find ourselves in yet, and it's less than ideal time to be in the midst of a hiring process. And I also believe firmly that a final hiring process can't be done remotely. In order to make a hiring decision, it's important for an elected body to interview people in person, have the opportunity to meet them. There's no substitute for that at the end of a process. So with that said, we had talked about selecting finalists today, moving to an interview process on April 20th. I think that is highly unlikely at this point, given the pandemic that we find ourselves in. So then it really becomes, well, we can't interview in person on April 20th. Should we do remote? I do not recommend that. I just feel it's incredibly important to be in the room with people before you make a hiring decision. So with that said, my recommendation to you is to hit the pause button and maybe schedule me to talk with you again in a month, and we would discuss further the options at that time, which may, at that time you can discuss, should we move forward with these candidates? I would stay in communication with the candidates that are under consideration so they would know what's going on. They would understand. I mean, they all, are as tuned in as the rest of us with this situation. So I think I'll stop now, Mr. Chair, and see if there's any questions of me. But my advice to you is to pause. Over.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's just go through commissioners for comments in general, especially in regard to the situation, what Mr. Wires has said and recommended, and any of your thoughts. So we'll start with Commissioner DeShaw.
Yeah, going to have to agree with Mr. Wires on this and put this on hold for a while until we can get a better grasp on what's going on and how long this is going to last. I don't know if we go out a month or if we go out farther than that, but I definitely think we need to hold on this. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Duker?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Wires that we should put this on hold and that in-person interviews are important. And I know it's important to the public to see and hear them in person and have that opportunity to meet with them. My only question is putting all 8 people on hold. Would it be better for us to go through our top 3 and put 5 people on hold and then only have 3 people on hold? Over.
Okay, I guess I'll address that to Mr. Wires. Do you want to comment on Commissioner Duker? Stop there.
Yes, yes. I would not recommend doing that at the present time, and the reason that I say that is if this situation goes on for, let's just say, a couple more months, what you choose to do 2 months from now may be different than what you choose today. So I would, and by that I mean, at that point you might say, let's consider re-advertising or doing some, just a short advertising just to see if there's any new candidates out there. And by picking finalists now, you would kind of nullify that opportunity. So I would not recommend picking finalists unless you were prepared to move forward with the process. Over.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Mills, your thoughts?
Thank you. This is Commissioner Mills. I had similar thoughts. I appreciate your advice, Mr. Wires, and I had similar thoughts to Commissioner Dukirk, but from a different angle, I guess. I was not thinking it in terms of letting the 3 candidates know, but I was curious about just where we were as a board on whether or not it would help my perspective in the process to know where we were as a board in what our top 3 were. But I can as far as the legality of comparing our notes, it sounds like once we quote, select finalists, then it becomes public and names are released. So I guess my question is, can we compare our top 3 without moving forward, or is it necessary to release names once we do compare our top 3? Over.
Should I answer that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead. I should have called on you.
Okay. I think that gets to be a gray area that I would urge you not to go down. Having a discussion, prioritizing candidates, talking about a top group gets very, very close to selecting finalists and opening up the public release of information. So, if you wanted to do that, I would urge some legal consultation on that before doing so. I would not recommend that, but I'm not your legal counsel either. I would definitely say if you wanted to explore that, that would require some legal analysis first. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sorley, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Mr. Wires that we should just hold tight and see down the road a couple of months, see where we are. I believe those 8 candidates understand the position, hopefully that we're in and they're in too. Nobody's traveling and so forth. So I would say let's put it on hold.
Okay, thank you. This is Commissioner Bersheim. I would like to just comment, having had some experience in this area, but in education, and we had some logical breaks there, but we need to really be careful about the integrity of this process, and that we have to do it in what we call real time. And if we start talking about, who's the top or so forth, we don't even know who's going to withdraw, and the likelihood, probability is that some people are going to withdraw. It's not a time to be moving, even if this gets resolved in 3 months and so forth. There's going to be all kinds of issues. And it's certainly not a time to deal with a transition at all. So my recommendation is to put this on hold or pause until we get through the COVID-19 pandemic process, so that we no longer have state restrictions or federal restrictions or even local restrictions. And I would assume we could revisit this in several months, but I think the reality that we're facing is we may have to go through this process or an amended process again, because we need to do it in real time. And integrity is so important. And we have to look at our ability at the county to move forward with a lot of time and attention to this. So those are my thoughts. And so at this time, does anyone else want to make another comment? I'll just say your name and please comment. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Mills. I was waiting for a roll call of sorts there, but I do have another comment, and I just want to make sure I was clear. I agree we should put it on pause. I was just curious if there was any more information we as a board could understand or glean from it. But I'm in full support of putting it on pause. Just to be clear. Thank you. Over.
Heidi?
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Duker?
Yeah, Commissioner Mills, I agree with you on this, and I kind of look at it as when we put out for employees for the county, we are able to hold applicants for 6 months. So as much as we'd like to discuss and see what our top 3 are, I agree with Mr. Wires that we should just pause right where we are, not have those discussions, have the full 8 sitting in the hopper, and quite possibly, again, the board will all have to talk about this at a later date. But again, having the possibility to advertise and then add more to the pot, see how many are still in the pot. I hate to refer to humans as being in pots, but so I think that we don't continue the discussion of what our feelings are and what our top candidates are, so that we have a bigger pool if possible. Over.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to comment on this? Okay. Well, let's go to entertaining a motion. I think this is where we're going to have to be careful in crafting it. I guess it could be general enough to deal with a pause and revisit this in 3 months or something like that and put it back on the agenda, or an inquiry with Mr. Weirs. I would think that'd be appropriate, but it's all circumstantial, depending upon what's going on. So I think we have to be careful in crafting it. But would anyone like to take an attempt at that? And
Heidi?
I'll just go through the roll call again, in saying, maybe how you want to have this motion look, so we can try to craft that a little bit better. So let's just start off with Commissioner Duker. Just to comment what you think the motion should be.
We can simply table. That gives us the opportunity to put it back on the agenda when we're ready. Over.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw?
I'll agree with Heidi on that. I guess I'd make that motion if we need one.
Well, let's see what everyone else has to say. Thank you, Commissioner Mills.
I'm comfortable tabling. We don't know whatsoever what our timeline will be, and we just need to be as flexible as we can and address things as they come forward. So I'm comfortable just tabling. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Sorley?
Yes, I'm comfortable with putting it on pause and tabling it for the future. Over.
Okay, yeah, and Commissioner Bershheim here, I think that's a great idea, and it seems to give us the most flexibility. So I did hear that Commissioner DeShaw maybe wanted to make a motion,
Yes, I'll make that motion.
or if anyone else wants. Okay, we have a motion to put this on table list until a further date. Is there support?
Heidi, second.
Okay.
Heidi.
Okay, thank you. And so all those, excuse me, I'm going to go through roll call. I'm going to start with myself. I vote yes. Aye. Commissioner Thorley?
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Commissioner Dukirk, aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye, over.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And thank you, Mr. Weirs. Any questions you have of us, or do you understand how we're going to proceed? And I'm sure you can be working with our interim administrator and so forth, or with me. Feel free to contact me. Any questions, Mr. Weirs?
I do not have any questions. I will, I heard your discussion and we'll proceed that way. That sounds good to me. Over.
And thank you so much, Mr. Weirs, for your flexibility and helping us work through this unique situation, and also your willingness, just for the sake of the public, that this extension will not be done at any greater cost. So that is very much appreciated, and I commend you for that.
Thank you. Over.
Okay, we'll move on to human resources. A, approve public health supervisor and public health educator job description. Would anyone want to comment on that to the commissioners?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just want to check. Pamela, are you on the call?
I am here. Thank you.
So maybe you want to give a brief introduction first, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
This is Pamela Dixon. The job descriptions put before you were reviewed and affirmed by the Personnel Committee, and also have gone through our classification committee for the purpose of grading. There is a job description for a public health supervisor, which would be, as we'll get to in the agenda, a reclassification for our current incumbent, Grace Grenager, who is our public health coordinator. So the public health coordinator will be changed to a supervisor. The second job description is a public health educator, which was also reviewed and affirmed by the Personnel Committee, as well as our classification committee. It was graded through that. This position would then report directly to the public health supervisor, incumbent Grace Grenager. Are there any specific questions about the job description?
All right, we'll go through questions or comments. We'll start with Commissioner Dukert.
Yeah, we reviewed these at the Personnel Committee, and I have no questions. It is business as usual, and they went through these. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills?
I was not in attendance at the Personnel Committee, and I apologize. I do not see the descriptions themselves in our board packet, but I have access to the Personnel Committee materials and so could review them there. But I just thought as a point of order, they should be in the packet themselves. Over.
Any comments on that from Ms. Dixon?
I'm sorry, I did not know, this is Pamela Dixon. I did not know they were not in the packet. I apologize for that. Would you like me to forward an email now?
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I myself did find them and have access. I just thought for other commissioners who are not on the Personnel Committee, as well as the public, that we should have them somewhere for everyone to see. I don't have concerns with the descriptions themselves. It's just the process or the point of order, rather, of having them in the packet. So I don't need them emailed to me. Thank you. Over.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we will,
Yes.
we will add those when we republish the revised agenda. We'll add those to the agenda so that the public can see them.
Okay, addressing to Commissioner Mills, will that be sufficient for your concerns?
This is Commissioner Mills. Yes, yes, thank you. Over.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw, your thoughts on this position description? Position description, excuse me.
No question.
Okay. Commissioner Sarley?
I have no questions. Over.
Okay, I have none. Okay, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the public health supervisor and public health educator job descriptions. Say your name, please. And
Heidi, motion to approve. Over.
okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second or support?
Commissioner Mills, second. Over.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? And I'll do a roll call. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner DeKirk?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley?
Aye. Over.
And Commissioner Bushine? Aye. Over. Motion passes unanimously. And then let's go on to B, approved posting for public health educator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This position for the public health educator is graded at a level 150. We would post the position with that salary range of a minimum of $20.50 up to a maximum of $28.09. The actual salary would be determined based on the level of experience and qualifications of the person coming into the role.
Okay, thank you. Get into a preliminary discussion on this one by roll call. Commissioner Sorley, any comments, concerns?
Thank you. Yes, I think it's good to post it. We probably, like everything else, have to wait and see what happens with the applications, but that would be my only comment. Thank you. Over.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Commissioner Duker?
No questions. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I don't have any questions, and I should have just said something with my previous comments, that these positions in particular, I find just the timing to be very important. It's unfortunate we didn't have this done before the pandemic, but even in the pandemic, it's of the utmost importance. And so I just really appreciate the work that you're doing, Pam, as well as the Personnel Committee and Public Health and Human Services. And that's all. Thank you. Over.
And Commissioner Bersheim here, yes, these things are really necessary. We find out now, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more staffing needs that are just critical. And I think we're learning through this process that we have to make sure that we're adequately staffed for these kinds of events to happen. Hopefully it'll never happen again to this extent, but who knows with the cycle that we're going to be going through in the future. So hopefully we can act on that. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the posting for the public health educator.
Commissioner Mills, I move to approve the posting for public health educator. Over.
Okay, do we have a support or second?
Support. Commissioner Sorley. Over.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, I'll do a roll call vote on this one. Commissioner DeShaw,
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert,
Yes. Over.
Commissioner Mills,
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley,
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim, aye. So the motion passes. We're approving that posting for public health educator. Thank you. And item C under Human Resources, approve reclassification for public health supervisor. Ms. Dixon, would you like to comment on that? And then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this would be a reclassification for current incumbent Grace Grenager, who is currently our public health coordinator. We have reclassified the position based on the change in job description to a supervisor role, a public health supervisor. Grace currently is at salary grade 180 for the coordinator position, and step 6 at $30.84 per hour. Reclassifying this position and moving Grace into the supervisor job description, which was classified as a grade level 200. According to our policy, we would then move Grace, the incumbent, up to the step in grade 200 that is closest to her current step in her current grade, which would be under grade 200, $31.46 per hour, which is a step 3. So I would ask for approval to reclassify the public health supervisor, Grace Grenager, to a step 200 at grade 200, step 3 at $31.46 per hour.
Thank you. So we'll go through a roll call for preliminary discussion and comments. So we'll start with Commissioner Mills.
This is Commissioner Mills. I made all my comments previously. Just really appreciate the work being done with this and the importance of the position. Over.
Commissioner Sorley.
I do agree with the importance of her job, and I thank her every minute for what she does. So that's my comment to move forward. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Dukert.
I would like to say the same things that Commissioner Sorley said. She has stepped into this role very well, and she will do very good as our supervisor. So I have no questions or concerns. Over.
Okay, Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
I have no questions, but also, again, really appreciate the work that we've had from Grace Ganager, and she's been working very hard, and hopefully this will help overall for being able to do more for the county. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote. If there's no more comments. We'll start with Commissioner DeShaw.
Aye.
Commissioner DeKirk.
Excuse me,
We need to have a motion first, so I want the motion to approve.
Thank you. Appreciate your help with it. Yep.
I'll second that.
Okay.
but,
And roll call.
yeah, there you go.
Commissioner DeShaw.
Aye.
Commissioner DeKirk.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills.
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bershheim. Aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you for all you're doing with this situation as well. And I know you've been a real asset to us as we go forward, and what you've done so far in helping us in our Human Resources Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll move on to administrator updates.
Good morning.
Interim. Go ahead.
Good morning again, Commissioners, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's just been a tad busy around here, but a couple of little highlights for you. We, of course, this week, the Windows guys came back because, you know, the timing of that was perfect. So they will probably wrap up the installation of the windows in the courthouse on the first floor today. And by wrap up, I mean the old windows are removed and the new ones are in. The solution that they came up with to make sure these windows are installed correctly is a really good one. The architect, John McNamara, was here yesterday and looked it over too. So they have special wood that they have to have cut and reordered so they can do the finishing work inside, but it's moving along. And when we get to the next item on this agenda of the facility closure, one of the things I guess that we'll need to talk about is whether we can allow them to keep working if the courthouse is shut down to the public. There's certainly some advantages of that because people aren't in their offices, so we're not disrupting work, but there are other issues that we may need to consider. The other thing is that just to let you know that on Thursday night, I think I let you know by email, the school board approved unanimously our custodial contract at the Y. So that work actually began yesterday. And they have taken over that according to the contract that we gave them. So that's very good news for us. And I think it's going to be, I think the way it's all set up and the specificity involved is going to allow us to control our costs a lot better, know exactly what they are, and deliver a higher quality of service. So that's just a kind of an FYI. The Emergency Operation Center Center, EOC, has been opened, and by that I mean it's started. It's not obviously fully fleshed out yet. Our emergency manager, Mike Keyport, opened it yesterday, and he has brought in, we're bringing in on contract, you'll see that contract soon, as soon as I can work with County Attorney Hicken on it, that will include Jim Wienanen, our two emergency managers ago, emergency manager, to help him managing that site. I think mostly it will be remote, and virtual. We'll work as virtual teams because we don't really want people crowded there either. So that's set up at the community center, and we'll start hearing more about that later today. They have been filling in the boxes on their incident command chart and, start penciling people in and making phone calls. I think the two things we're going to see rolled out first is one we desperately need, and we all know it because those of us who are getting all the emails know it, is our PIO communication piece. So I expect Mike to have a media release on that later today. And then under logistics, probably someone coordinating needs and volunteers, both with our healthcare professionals, but other needs in the community. There's been a great outpouring of volunteerism and of businesses that are shut down, making incredible offers to help in any way they can. People offering their entire hotels. Dennis Risdahl offering up one of his entire hotels to use as a quarantine site. We know that so many other cities are struggling to find those kinds of sites, and straight up we had one of our business owners just offering that up. So we'll be working with the hospital to figure out how to roll those things out over the next coming weeks. So those are the main things at this time. Getting into item B, excuse me, I'm not sick. I have a croggy throat in the morning. So the next item is about closing our county facilities to the public. Just as a precursor to that, for about 3 weeks, county departments have been identifying their essential services. We've been trying to identify and inventory the technical needs of individual employees so that we can get as many people working at home as possible. We've been making sure they understand how to use collaboration tools like our Skype for Business so they can stay connected. Some departments have certainly more to think about. PHHS and our sheriff's office will continue to have contact with the public, so they've been working on protocols for how they keep their employees safe when they need to have those meetings or transport people. So there's a lot that some of these departments have done. It's sort of one thing in a plan to say our idea is we will send people home to work. It's another thing to send people home and work, and there's actually a lot underneath that to make that happen. And I would just put my other hat on a minute and call out my IT staff, Keishan and Kirk, who have just been amazing for the last couple of weeks and patient with people, trying to get them into a new reality. And they've built, I think, nearly 50 laptops for people to do their work on. So that's a lot of work in a couple of weeks, as well as doing all their other work. So I so much appreciate those two. Anyway, so what's before you today, and I think you all saw it in an email this morning that I got from County Attorney Hicken, kind of a final draft of it, is a resolution to restrict public access to our county buildings. And I'm wondering, County Attorney Hicken, if you might want to say a few words about that, or perhaps read it, since you drafted it.
I'm happy to do that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Molly Higgins. I sent out a draft resolution. Ms. Hawkins, I see, is in the room, and maybe you can make sure I got the numbering right. It's entitled Cook County Resolution 20-15, restricting public access to county buildings during the novel coronavirus outbreak of 2020. The title of the draft resolution. This has been shared by email with all of the commissioners, as well as our district court judge, the Honorable Michael Kuzo, and Sheriff Pat Eliason. I understand that Sheriff Eliason is on the line right now. Are you?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Judge Kuzo was offered the opportunity to participate in this conversation, but he is comfortable with us going on without him in light of the Supreme Court's most recent order as of Friday, March 20th, which allows for the continuation of court services without public access to court administration windows. And so I think that he did indicate that he's available and he's upstairs in the courthouse, and we could call him in if commissioners had questions for him or specifically requested that he address anything. Do commissioners, Mr. Chair, do you wish for me to read this resolution out loud?
I think that would be appropriate for the public to listen to, so please do so.
Thank you. Whereas on March 13, 2020, the governor of the state of Minnesota declared a peacetime emergency related to the transmission of the novel coronavirus and its resulting illness, COVID-19. And on March 17, 2020, the Cook County Board of Commissioners declared Cook County in a state of emergency for conditions resulting from the COVID-19 outbreak. Whereas COVID-19 is a viral respiratory illness caused by a novel coronavirus, potentially fatal and known to spread rapidly among populations without preventative measures and rapid action by local authorities. Whereas Cook County has limited local medical services, a higher than average population of older adults, and a higher than average level of movement across its borders related to Cook County's tourism industry and its seasonal population. Whereas public health authorities have recommended that action be taken to reduce likelihood of novel coronavirus transmission in public places and in order to slow down community transmission of the virus. Whereas the Cook County Board of Commissioners has a responsibility to manage operations within its facilities in a way that best protects Cook County employees from becoming ill and best prevents or slows the transmission of the novel coronavirus. Whereas the Cook County Administrator has requested that members of the public be restricted from entering Cook County facilities and alternative means for providing essential county services be determined and deployed by county staff. Whereas 6th District Court Judge Michael Kuzo and 6th District Court Chief Judge Sally Tarnowski have been consulted, and restricting public access may be accomplished consistent with the recently issued orders of the 6th District Court and the Minnesota Supreme Court related to continuity of court operations under the COVID-19 outbreak. Therefore, be it resolved that 1, all Cook County business, at least at the level of essential operations, shall continue. 2, the county administrator is directed to work with county department heads to develop and institute procedures and policies for the provision of essential county services without the requirement of entry into county buildings, primarily by phone, email, and other means, without unnecessary face-to-face contact between members of the public and county employees. 3, these procedures shall not be inconsistent with the orders issued by the Supreme Court of the State of Minnesota on March 13 and March 20, and the orders issued by the Chief Judge of the 6th District on March 18 and March 20, all concerning continuing operations of the courts and access of the public to the courts. 4, these procedures shall not be inconsistent with open meeting law, providing access of the public to public meetings of public bodies, government data practices law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or any other state or federal law. 5, the county administrator is directed to publicize and disseminate the modified procedures the public shall use for accessing county services as soon as possible. 6, the Cook County Sheriff is requested to assist in enhanced screening procedures as required by the judicial branch and intended to reduce the likelihood of coronavirus transmission. And 7, Effective as of noon Wednesday, March 25th, 2020, all county buildings are closed to physical public access until further notice, except as allowed by the county's modified procedures for access to county services, referred to above. And then I have the language about adoption. So I just want to make sure you all know that it's, I have the Word document for this resolution in front of me, and I'm prepared to make changes according to your discussion. I came up with the closure date and time on my own of noon tomorrow, and that can be modified, of course. Well, we had some discussions about this resolution and its content by email. The draft was only available to the county administrator this morning, and so she may wish to ask for modifications.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I?
With that, I'll open it up.
Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Okay, so.
Can I ask?
Interim Administrator.
Okay. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. Attorney Hicken, I'm wondering how this might change if the governor puts, right now this is really restricting the public, how this order might actually change, or maybe it won't, if the governor puts out a shelter-in-place order. Over.
Administrator Rogers, thank you. This is County Attorney Hicken. I am really not prepared to address how this resolution could be affected by a governor's executive order without knowing the subject of and the detail of a shelter-in-place order. At this point, I understand that's merely a potential action by the governor's office, and I believe there to be a lot of discussion with how to identify what essential services are. How that executive order affects whether our staff are required to shelter in place at home is going to depend on how the essential services are identified, along with many other factors we might not even be able to anticipate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. One further
Okay.
question, excuse me, Mr. Chair, one further question for the commissioners to consider. If you pass this for the public, if it would be acceptable for us to continue as long as we can, pending an announcement from the governor, to have the Windows installers continue their work, since there won't be people in the offices, and that would be the least disruptive way to do that. Over.
I guess my thought there would be that they're really not the public, they're contractors, but do you think there should be some language there?
Commissioner, I don't know that there needs to be language in here. I'm more looking for direction, how the commissioners feel about that, if they see a problem with that.
Okay, so that could be part of the discussion. Okay, so we'll go through a roll call where people can, commissioners can comment or ask questions, and we'll try to go through a roll call and maybe go through it again if necessary. Let's just see how this goes. So let's start with Commissioner DeShaw. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I just, how is this going to affect land services or other things that people may need to come in and get permits for?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. I think we have e-permitting in place now for 4 years, so most of our basically applying for that can be done online. We are sending several members of that office home to work. They have laptops. They can do all of their work from home. They can forward their phones to their home phones or to their cell phones. This is the same for many people in the courthouse right now. So they would be able to, hopefully answer most questions over the phone and not require a personal visit. That's what we would recommend. And then also in terms of meetings, the Planning Commission and the, that particular group and the Board of Adjustments could hold meetings very much like we're holding them right now. They could do that as a phone conference call. And I think that would take a little bit of help with their board to make sure they know how to do that, but certainly that's a possibility as well. So I think there are ways they could proceed and not slow up their business. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people are going to be able to continue to work. And, you know, just because the government or our building is shut down doesn't mean that the contractors and the public need to continue going to work and supporting their families and whatnot too. So that's all I got.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's why it's been really important for us to get set up like this for the last couple of weeks, both for our own staff to be able to work at home, but also so that almost really as much of county business as possible can move along without interruption. So I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sorley, comments or questions?
Thank you. I guess the comment or question I would have is if we're sheltering in place, then would workmen even be considered coming to work in the courthouse with finishing the windows, or could they have a point where they wrap it up? Because I think the governor in the next couple of days will probably have that mandate. So how would that apply to workers? Over.
Mr. Chair, I'll address that. So that's a very good question. It's certainly, Commissioner, one that we have been talking through the last couple of days. Because that order isn't there, they are still here working today. You may have heard the pounding in the background in the office next door while they were doing some work. But the conversation I had with them yesterday and with their project manager is that depending on what the governor says, work could stop anytime. You know, but I guess and so they would go home at that point. So they're literally trying to get as much work as they can done before that happens. Once the governor makes that kind of order, depending on what that order is, we would make a decision compliant with that order. Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Duker?
Yeah, I want to, there's a lot going on because Rena had a presentation in Molly. So first of all, not only to recognize the IT staff, but also recognize the rest of the staff who have completely turned their lives upside down and are learning how to work from home. I know for some people that sounds like a luxury, but I can tell you working from home is incredibly difficult because you don't have your office, you don't have your tools, you don't have your files. And in dealing with another county and trying to call, since they had already been sent to shelter in place, their rollover phone system didn't work. So it took a feat of God to get a hold of staff. It was accomplished, but I just want to recognize all of the staff that have attempted to try and work at home and continue to provide services to the community. And please be kind to the IT department. They are doing the best that they can to work with us, and I ask that of the public also. Along those lines of working, I think when we choose to close the courthouse to the public, it's to protect the public and the staff. So my concern is having the window workers continue. They are public, and they are exposing themselves. They are traveling, they're getting food, they're stopping at gas stations. So I am comfortable with them continuing work if the office is empty and they're able to safely distance from staff. I am okay with that. I know that it's easier for them to safely distance than it is for the public, because when the public is in, they are very close to the staff in getting paperwork and stuff with each other. And then my other concern is we do not have a official county board meeting until April 14th. So if we need to hire Jim Weenan in or a public information officer, I would like to ask Molly if we should approve that pending county attorney, administrator, and HR approval so that that can be done without us calling a special meeting. Over.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond to that? This is Molly Hicken.
Yes, I think we could do that. Thank you.
did discuss this with Administrator Rogers briefly, and essentially it's what the county board could do today is to delegate signatory authority for signing a contract with Jim Wienanen. But it's difficult for me to advise you to do so without at least being able to have a rough outline of the terms of that contract. It may be a holdover type action, but I guess I would want a little bit more on the record from Administrator Rogers about an outline of that agreement, at least the key terms of the expense of the contract, the term of the contract, so how long it would be in place, and a summary description of what services would be provided. And then I think it would be okay for for commissioners to consider a motion to delegate signatory authority to County Administrator Rogers on that event. I also think another alternative would be to set up a special meeting of the board for some time in the future, and make the purpose of that meeting kind of general, but at least specified to deal with any COVID-19 response action items required of the board. So you could define the purpose of the special meeting that way, and actions like this one and things that we haven't anticipated could be dealt with potentially before April 14th. If it was determined that that meeting was not necessary, then it could just be canceled. Over.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, one of the things,
Yeah, go ahead.
Because this really is kind of my first rodeo, that I don't know, and I need to get clarification from our emergency manager on, is I know that in the ICS structure, the board acts as a policy and sort of a governing body over to work with the emergency manager. So it may be, and I'll check with him, it may be that as part of that, he can call a meeting with the board and bring up issues like this that pertain to how the EOC and how our emergency will be managed, and get that feedback from the board that way. So let me check on that, and I will respond to commissioners in email about that and let you know if that's a possibility. Over.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. If I recall, there are provisions in that process in which we could deal with some of these issues like contracting and so forth. So, yes, I would agree with that as board chair. Commissioner Mills, comments, questions on the closure?
Hi, thank you. This is Commissioner Mills, and yeah, the only immediate comment I have in regards to the most recent discussion about a special meeting is, we're in a state of emergency. We can call an emergency meeting. I think that's very appropriate. But finding out from Mike just the process there, I think is probably the best first step. I did have a number of other questions and concerns regarding the closure, kind of along the lines of Commissioner Dukirk, and as far as the contractors and their exposure. We don't. I am also comfortable if the office is empty that they're working on. I would think we want to make sure they're following protocols as far as hand sanitizing and just any surface that's touched while they're going in and out of the building. I know it's difficult, but I think it's of the utmost importance. It's an extra step, but we're talking about people's lives here, and I think if that work is going to continue, that needs to be in place. I also had concerns just about those in our community in the most need and their access to public health and human services. I know that Public Health and Human Services put out an excellent memo to the public that I shared on social media about how to access the department during this pandemic. But I just don't have a good concept of what percentage of individuals or families need or use public health and human services face-to-face versus electronically or by mail. My gut assumption would be that many, if not most, just due to technology access and just where people are in life, that many, if not most, do come in person. So I do have concerns about that, and I know they can schedule an appointment, but I just want to make sure we're thinking about that aspect and the protocols used if and when those interactions happen. Getting to the resolution itself, I'm curious about number 4, how that will look practically, logistically, and in particular public hearings, or if we're just, if public hearings are ending during this emergency. And then I also, I guess, have a question for Sheriff Eliason with number 6. Just, what enhanced screenings are, if this is going to be stretching the department, thinner yet. I know that, staffing is a challenge before the pandemic, and so now during this, I have concerns that they're getting stretched too thin. So I was just hoping for a little perspective there, and how we can best use our resources and respect those resources. So those are the things that come to mind immediately. Over.
Okay. I think, do you want to go ahead, Interim Administrator Rogers, and comment, and as well as Sheriff Eliason at this point to his concerns?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address the Public Health and Human Services piece of access. I know this has been one of the most serious and thoughtful conversations undertaken by Allison McIntyre and her staff, as their primary concern is always for their clients and also recognizing that probably more people are going to need these services in the future during this crisis. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, I think we will be able to get that installed tomorrow or the next day, is one of these kind of smart doorbells outside of the main door to the courthouse and the other door upstairs off the ramp to BHHS. What that will enable us to do, they have videos and microphones in them. And so if somebody is at the door and says they need to come in, someone who is working in the courthouse, perhaps one of our clerical staff who usually works the desk, would get an email, or would get, probably more like on a smart device, like on a phone, would get a message that shows the person standing there, and they can talk to them. It makes like a FaceTime or a video with them. You've seen it probably advertised on TV. They can ask the person what they need, who they need to see, and I know upstairs they will maintain in their work sort of a skeletal staff, one or more intake people who can actually take people's information and get them into the system. They will also have a front desk staff person or two, and then probably at least one social worker up there at any given time, so that they can address walk-in needs or more critical needs that need immediate attention. So a lot of thought been given to this, and certainly we have kinks to work out, but your concerns are certainly shared by the folks upstairs and have been expressed in their planning. Over.
Thank you. Sheriff Eliason, are you available to comment about the second issue?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. We will continue our screenings at the courthouse for court operations. If there's trials or if there's hearings, we will have staff there. We are a bit thin right now, but we are also tasked with court security, so we'll do what we can, and depending on what the governor decides as far as shutting things down and sheltering in place, we may have to make sure that we have all of our staff on hand and ready to go at a moment's notice.
Okay. If I could just interject at this time, Sheriff Eliason, special thanks to you and your staff. I know that you're really, tight on your staffing situation, and we know that you're really going way beyond 100%. And so, thank you so much to you and your staff and the dispatchers and everyone. So important during these times. Comments for me in regards to the closing of the courthouse. I think on the construction, hopefully we'll just have to do this day by day. I think we also would encourage them to follow the best practices. I would assume that they are doing that from their employer, but I have concerns that we don't expose some of our people to supervise that process. I think that has to be something that can be communicated to the foreman and so forth, but those comments are important, and we should make sure that those procedures are followed, but the distancing thing is an issue as well. So I support the way it's written as presented. So I guess I'm going to go through, we've heard some discussion, and go through this roll call again, just to make sure that we understand this and we've clarified some of the issues. So I'll start with Commissioner DeShaw. Any more comments or questions on taking action on this resolution?
No more comments.
Commissioner DeKirk?
Yeah, I like to have 700 backup plans, so I understand that there will be conversations about the board being able to make decisions in a crisis, but I would also like to have the safety net of Molly's suggestion, which is us just setting up tentatively to have a meeting on March 31st that can be canceled if we don't need it. And I say that only because we have all cleared our schedules for the morning of March 31st to have the Speak Your Piece, which has now been canceled. So I think that would be the least disruptive to all of our schedules. Over.
Very good suggestion. Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you. This is Commissioner Mills. I think that's an excellent suggestion for the 31st. I guess two of my, touching back on my concerns, just want to make sure, if there's a doorbell, everybody's touching it, and I hope that that's being looked at and addressed. But that's an excellent idea, a really good way to let people in. And but again, I do have concerns about the enhanced screening. So just the way the wording is the enhanced screening is it implies it's different than the normal security screening at the courthouse, and the intent, it appears, is to reduce the likelihood of coronavirus transmission. And so that's another level, kind of next level of burden on our law enforcement staff, and I just want us to be aware of that, that we're asking for more there, and really hoping that it's not asking for too much. And then just my concern about number 4 in the resolution was not addressed, as far as the logistics of say a public hearing, or if there will be no public hearings, or what our intentions are there, or maybe we just can't know that at this point. But I want to at least talk about it. Over.
Mr.
Okay, so
Chair, this is,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is Molly Hicken. If I can respond to Commissioner Mills' concern. To to the best of my ability, at least. I think some of this we can't answer right now, and that's why I drafted this resolution in a way that authorizes the county administrator to work with department heads to develop and institute these procedures. And then I outlined that those procedures need to be consistent with open meeting law, etc. On the issue of public hearings, that is something that I need to do some legal research into as to how open meeting law in a state of emergency might affect public hearings. I don't wish the answer to be that we cannot have public hearings in this environment. I think that Mr. Lubota's letter that was read at the beginning of the meeting shows how that could potentially affect business owners and important construction projects that are ongoing, as well as other people's property rights. So we want to protect those the best we can, and I ask for leave of the commissioners to do the research and come up with a memorandum that can direct our zoning department or inform our zoning department, and then I can copy commissioners if they'd like and are interested in that process. But I don't have an answer right now, especially if there is a shelter-in-place order potentially coming from the governor's office. I'd hesitate to, on the fly, come up with a set of procedures for you. I also want to address, if I can, Commissioner Mills' questions about the enhanced screening. When I use that term, enhanced screening, in the draft resolution, what I'm referring to is some additional screening that it appears will be necessary by direction of the Minnesota Supreme Court. I can share the court order that came down on March 20th, which was kind of a follow-up to another order that came out on March 13th, requiring some additional questions of people before they enter court facilities. Because most court hearings are public, any member of the public in a normal situation can attend, but the Supreme Court's order restricts access to only parties, attorneys for parties, court personnel that are necessary, and whoever else the judge allows into the courtroom, and requires that there be an inquiry of people trying to enter the facilities. What case are you here for? What's the case number? What's the case name? That's not something that's typically part of our sheriff's office personnel screening. And perhaps Sheriff Eliason would like to further elaborate. I know that, and I'm grateful for the fact that he's already developing procedures, amended procedures. He's reviewed the court's order, and he has figured out or got towards figuring out how to enhance the screening to fit the court's directive. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sorley, do you have any comments? Second time around.
Thank you. I guess my comment would be, Commissioner Mills brings up some good points. I believe we're all in the process of trying to figure out how to do each thing step by step. So I would leave it to Attorney Hicken to develop something as they come up, and Administrator Rena to also address those. And I do believe that March 31st meeting would be appropriate in terms of whatever would be needed for us to discuss. If there isn't anything, then we move on to coming up with whatever would be necessary the first part of April. Over.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I guess I'll just make a couple of comments. I do appreciate all the work Attorney Hicken and our interim administrator and our sheriff are doing in this regard. And one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is we don't want to be, too open, but we don't want to be too restrictive in some of these things, because this is a moving target, so to speak. It's a moving pandemic. and more will happen at the state. But I really appreciate the research and working as a team that you're doing right now and giving us the best information real time and where we're at. And it's a work in progress, as I mentioned, and I do appreciate your work. So I think I'm very comfortable with the way it's been written. Spent some time going over it earlier this morning. So I guess at this point, I would like to call for a motion to approve the resolution to close the county facilities.
Heidi, motion to approve. Over.
Okay, thank you. Support or second?
Commissioner Mills,
Support.
Over.
Okay. Vote Commissioner Mills support. Motion by Dukert. Any further questions or comments? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Bersheim, aye. Commissioner Sorley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Commissioner Dukirk, aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Okay, so we didn't add this to the agenda, but I think as board chair, I'll do it now. And it could be considered, if nothing else, commissioner concerns. But I think we should discuss and make a motion to schedule or put on our calendars a meeting for 8:30 on March 31st. That's suggested by Commissioner Dukirk, a very good one, and I think others have supported that. So I will just like to throw that out there for the commissioners to just respond to that. And then we'll see if we can go forward with the motion. So in regards to having a meeting on the 31st, sort of temporarily set, be on call for at 8:30. Commissioner DeShaw, any comments, questions, or concerns?
No, that'll work for me.
Commissioner Dukert?
Works for me. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, sounds good. Over.
Commissioner Sorley?
Yes, I agree. Over.
And
Did you have
Commissioner Bersheim
something else for
definitely
the closing?
support that. So I'd entertain a motion to schedule a meeting for March 31st on a tentative basis at 8:30. Someone like to make that motion?
This is Heidi. I will make a motion to schedule a special meeting March 31st to begin at 8:30 a.m. Agenda items will be anything pertaining to the COVID-19 outbreak. Over.
Thank you. Do we have support or second?
Support. Sorley. Over.
Okay, Dorley. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Then we'll vote on aye. Commissioner Bersheim votes yes. Commissioner Sorley?
Yes. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Commissioner Dukirk, aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Okay, we will schedule this for March 31st at 8:30, a unanimous vote. Okay, let's go to commissioner concerns or employee concerns. We have had a little discussion and everyone received some information about travel advisory resolution that was done and published in the paper and on the media. So I think we'll deal with that issue at this time. So let's just start with comments by roll call. We'll start with Commissioner Dukert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did send this in. So Bayfield in Wisconsin is very similar to Cook County with the seasonal homeowners and the demographics of older citizens. And so just for the public, I'll read the 5 items quickly and I'll try to change it to Cook County. One, due to high community transmission in certain areas of the state and across the nation, Cook County is recommending that you stay in your home area if you have a seasonal or second home in Cook County. Due to our limited healthcare infrastructure, please do not visit us now. 2, people who have seasonal homes in Cook County, please stay at your winter homes at this time. If you are already in Cook County, you must immediately self-isolate for 14 days. If you need assistance during that time for supplies, please contact Cook County Health and Human Services. 3, Cook County has one of the highest populations of older adults in the state of Minnesota. This population is at high risk of COVID-19, and it is our priority to keep our older residents healthy and safe. 4, on March 17, 2020, the Cook County Board of Commissioners declared a countywide emergency declaration. Please be aware that additional health and travel restrictions may be imposed. And 5, this is an ever-changing and serious health situation in Cook County, and we need to be diligent. The reason for this is that we've had quite a bit of concerns from citizens of messaging coming from places not from the county, and citizens wondering where we as a county stand on this. This is not a resolution. This is not enforceable by law enforcement. This is not a stand down. It's just a clear, concise message coming from the board that we not only care about our citizens currently here and who live here, but we also care about our citizens who are coming here. And we obviously want you to come when this pandemic is over. But at this point, we need to take the highest restrictions that we can within the law. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I have got a few emails in the last few days and talked to a lot of people in the public, and they would agree with something like this, so I would be in support of this.
Okay. Commissioner Sarley?
Yes, I agree that a travel advisory is important to discuss here, and I believe that for the duration of where we are with our pandemic, that it would be wise to suggest that, and hopefully people will understand and come back in the future to enjoy our county. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I am in full support of a travel advisory. I was hoping to get input from emergency management and public health and human services on this, but I'm very comfortable issuing a travel advisory, and I hope we can also collaborate with the Chamber and Visit Cook County to get this message out. It's in the best interest of our country and our state and our county. And we can't do it soon enough. So, over.
In my comments is I generally agree with previous comments and think it's important that we send out an advisory on this. And I do know that Cook County Chamber of Commerce and Cook Visitors Tourism Bureau is trying to address this in their own context. But I think it's important that we make a statement, and I guess I would like to call on our county attorney, Hicken, for any comments from her legal perspective. And I guess specifically, I appreciated Commissioner Dukirk's wording, and I don't know if everyone heard that, but Attorney Hicken, would wording like that suffice, or any comments that you would have about something like this? I know that Wisconsin, excuse me, Wisconsin is in a different state, and I don't know if there's statute issues here, but I think an advisory would not be affected by any of that. So would you please comment with your thoughts and legal advice on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Molly Hicken. I do support the issuance of a travel advisory. I think it is within the county board's authority. It's an advisory, so it's not a mandatory order of the commissioners. I think the authority to issue that kind of order is questionable without further research, and kind of opens a can of worms as it applies especially to those who own property here and are seeking to use and enjoy their property. So it's an advisory, it's a communication of the county. I think it's appropriate. And I'm not concerned about enforcement issues when it's not a mandatory order of the county board. Over.
Thank you. So to move forward, in looking at the language, did you all receive this and are able to see what was sent out this morning and that came from Bayfield County that Commissioner Dukirk read? Would you just please indicate if you have not? Okay, thank you. She read through it all, I think, with the exception of the last two statements that the advisory remains in effect until further notice. And the county provided the following phone number for questions. I don't know if we want to do that or not, but generally speaking, can we sort of use this and wordsmith it or maybe adopt it with the insertion of Cook County? And then we'll do a roll call on that to see how we can move forward with this. So we'll start off with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Mills. Yeah, there was just a couple words, one word in particular, and number 2 says you must immediately self-isolate for 14 days. First off, I think it should say it should instead of must. And it's not isolate, it's quarantine. I think the language is important dealing with this pandemic. And then the only other thing is, you know, we as a board are doing this. It's not the county health department. So just make sure that language is clear. Although I did just get an email from Grace saying that she does support the advisory like this for the health and safety of our community. So that was all. Over.
Okay, so Commissioner Sorley?
Yes, I like the word should inserted there. I also have a question as to then how do we proceed with getting this out to the public? Will it be on our website or how would we go about doing that? Over.
I think it would be a press release, and goes through various channels. But
So,
Administrator Rogers, do you have any other comments on that? Or
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what I will do, we'll draft this up. I'll go talk with our emergency manager and see. We're hopefully going to have, by the end of the day today, a number where people can start calling in with questions. So we would probably use that number in the media release. With this, we would do a media release. I would make a phone call or two to the chamber and to visit Cook County and see if I can get them to share this on their websites as well, and we'd put it on our website and share it through social media. I think there's a variety of things we could do. But I want to make sure that we have a way for people to call in if they have questions, and that might take the day to do that. And make sure we've got a way for somebody to answer that phone. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Dukirk?
I don't like the word should in talking with people who are coming in and out of our community. When you say to them that it's important that they quarantine, they really don't take it seriously, and I think we need to have some strong language. And then, Commissioner Mills, you missed the conversation we had last week with Attorney Hicken, and during this pandemic, quarantine is a specific word that has some concern, so I'd like her input on it. I think leaving it as self-isolate is better because they're using quarantine for numbers and tracking. So I will send that back, and if everyone else thinks the word should be should, I'm okay with it, but I don't think should is strong enough. Over.
Okay.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Dukirk.
No, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I will first address the use of the word quarantine versus isolation. I actually do tend to agree with Commissioner Mills that it should be quarantine. Isolation is the word that, as I understand it from last week's meeting and the report of the public health coordinator, Grace Greninger, isolation is used for people who have tested positive for COVID or are symptomatic of COVID-19. Quarantine is the word used for people who may have had some exposure. For example, people coming from communities where there is a high level of community transmission. Perhaps the most accurate language might be to voluntarily quarantine, so that we make it clear that this is not, the county board is not ordering anyone to quarantine. This is not something that should be considered an official or mandatory thing. And along those lines of concern, the word should versus must, I can see arguments for including either of those words. I think that can probably be left to the discretion of the board. Again, my only concern here is that we not send the message that this is mandatory, because we really don't have the authority, as I understand it, to restrict movement in and out of our county. Over.
Heidi?
Okay.
I am comfortable with Molly's recommendation of it saying should voluntarily self-quarantine. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Could we put social?
DeShaw?
Could we put social distancing in there somewhere? I don't know. Are we we're gonna get a copy of this afternoon when it's all done? And can we vote for it electronically?
That is a question for our attorney, I think. I can get you a copy, certainly, and I'm taking notes on what people are recommending. What do you think?
I would assume
County
that
Attorney.
we have to take action in an open meeting.
Mr. Chair, that's
Can we get
accurate. Molly Higgins.
Yeah.
You can't vote by email.
We voted at ARC last week by email on a few resolutions.
Attorney Hicken, if you want to respond, I think there's just different statutes and regulations there.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Chair, that would be my response. I don't advise ARC. I have to research their bylaws, but I believe that they're a public body also. I could be wrong. They might have different open meeting law requirements, but as far as I know, electronic votes are not authorized. Maybe maybe consensus of the board. But what I would suggest is that the board acts to delegate authority to the administrator to redraft this, and then direct the administrator to share it with the board. And if any specific member has concerns with it, perhaps she could pull it. Over.
Okay. Is that clear to everyone that could be a way to proceed, that we would authorize our interim administrator to draft something, and then it could be assumed adopted and we could modify it in the future? Would that be reasonable?
I make the motion. Commissioner Dukirk, I make the motion to approve the document with changes, having the interim administrator word it to fit Cook County, final approval by the county attorney, and review of each individual commissioner with a positive response. Over.
Okay, in regards to that motion, Attorney Hicken, Does this address your concerns?
I think that's sufficient.
So actually, we could just approve it by email when it's presented to us, and then it would become, then it would be released. Is that the understanding?
We're approving it now, but it will have final confirmation from the board.
By email? Yeah, okay.
Excuse me, this is Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, any further?
And then I'd like to discuss, sorry, if I may.
Go ahead with discussion.
I'm not clear on why we need to wait on anything. There was very few changes, and I'd like to get this out as soon as possible. It's not a binding, it's an advisory. I don't understand the problem at this point with approving our advisory with very few changes.
Okay. Yeah, I think if we authorize, this would be fine. Excuse me. I think if we had authorized it, we could assume it's fine, understanding that, it'll include the information. Commissioner Sorley, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, I believe that if we can do it at our meeting right now, then we can move forward with it and have that out whenever interim Rogers can work on that today. Over.
Okay, Commissioner DeShaw?
Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, Commissioner Dukert?
Dave, the one thing we do have to wait on is confirmation of the phone number, so I trust that Rena will get that in place as soon as possible, and this will go out as quickly as it can if that addresses your concern. Over.
Okay. Yes, and I think I support that as well. Once we can get that number in there, I think we can authorize the attorney to do that. So I think we all understand the motion. Any questions on that? We have a second, I believe. So roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim votes aye. That's unanimous. Pass. Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions, I guess concerns, excuse me, for the commissioners? I have one announcement. We have been trying to do the reappraisal meeting with the Department of Agriculture, and we've tried to schedule a couple of trips, which we've had to cancel, obviously because of the situation, but we're still going ahead. We're meeting with the other counties involved, and we're going to have a teleconference with Deputy Secretary Fensky from the United States Department of Agriculture at noon on, I believe it's April 6th. And
April 2nd.
Excuse me, April 2nd is the teleconference with Deputy Secretary Fensky.
Yes, that was the email that went around yesterday.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. So we're going to go forward with that, and we're working on it. We'll have a preliminary teleconference in regards to our presentation. So we really appreciate this opportunity because this is something that's very important to us, and we're going to work on getting that done because it has huge impact for our future. Any other concerns, announcements from the commissioners? Commissioner, excuse me, I'll just announce a couple things. The training has been canceled for Speak Your Piece. We no longer have the administrator interviews, and there's a schedule for Board of Appeals and Equalization on June 18th at 6 p.m. We're still going to have that on the calendar. So now, any other concerns or announcements from the commissioners?
Heidi?
Yes, Commissioner Dukert?
I would just like to address the Planning Commission's meetings. I would like to assure the entire board that Tim and Bill are working with the staff to see about setting a meeting earlier than April 29th. I would like to caution against setting a meeting for Laboda specifically. And the reason for that is Mr. Laboda is a member of the Planning Commission, and I think that the optics to the public would be very bad to do that. And there are other people who have applications in process that have also been pulled that do have impacts on their businesses. So if it were determined that the Planning Commission should go forward with an earlier scheduled meeting than April 29th, I think that should be done with every single applicant on the agenda as it would have been on the 8th, to only be fair. And, you know, these are strange times, and I know that people's businesses are important and are ever changing with the dates changing, but we need to offer the same to everybody. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Dukert. Any other comments? Just say your name, please. Okay. Before we're going to entertain a motion to adjourn, I'd just like to end with two quotes that I just saw recently. One is from Tom Hanks, who was in the Time magazine of this week. He said, "Let's take care of ourselves and each other." Very simple statement, but I think it says a lot. Another one from Ralph Waldo Henderson, his famous quote that's been said by many, presidents especially: "What lies before us or what lies behind us is little or small compared to what lies within us." And I hope that we can work together, and I want to thank the commissioners and all the staff for how we went through this meeting. I think we got the serious issues dealt with very appropriately, and I really appreciate your willingness to cooperate and work together and reach agreement. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Over and out.
So was I supposed to then be here today, or wasn't I?
That's fine.
Oh, okay.